A Classical Music Resource Guide. Chapter 1. Classical Music Resources. The biggest classical music resource website is probably classical.net/music/links/index.php. Very big, lists many organizations. Classical music news websites. ClassicaJapan.com, Classica, classical music news and reviews from Japan. classical-music.com, BBC Music Magazine. classical-iconoclast.blogspot.com, Classical Iconoclast. classicalmusicblog.com, Classical Music Blog. classicalmusicblogspot.com, Classical Music Blogspot, a blog for classical music lovers everywhere. classicalmusicsentinel.com, Classical Music Sentinel, a new website devoted to information and reviews on classical music recordings. classicstoday.com, Classical News Today, Classical Reviews. classicstodayfrance.com, Classics Today France, French classical music reviews. Classical music review websites. bbc.co.uk/radio3/classical/index.html, BBC, Radio 3 Classical Music Reviews. classicstoday.com, Classics Today, Classical Music Reviews, Record Reviews. classicalmusicsentinel.com, Classical Music Sentinel, a website devoted to information and reviews on classical music recordings. gramophone.co.uk, Gramophone, a magazine searchable archive of classical music record and CD reviews. musikerforum.de, Musiker Forum. newyorktimes.com/section/arts/music, New York Times Classical Music Review. recordreview.co.uk, Record Review, UK. slippedisc.com, Slipped Disc. Slipped Disc, founded by Norman Lebrecht, is an interactive classical music site that receives a constant flow of information from its readers around the world. telegraph.co.uk/music, the London Telegraph Review section. Orchestra websites/symphony websites. Orchestras and symphonies are big musical groups who do public performances, make recordings usually of classical music and play the music for movie scores. Symphony.org, American Symphony Orchestra. Orchestranet.co.uk, Orchestranet World Directory of Music and Orchestras. cscphilharmony.cz. ChattanoogaZMphony.org. ChicagoZMphony.org. CSO.org, Chicago Symphony Orchestra. kawasaki-sym-hall.jp, Music Kawasaki Symphony Hall, home of the Tokyo Symphony Orchestra. LasVegasPhilharmonic.com. MobileZMphony.org, Mobile, Al. Orchestralist.org. PortlandZMphony.com. ReginaZMphony.com. SantaRosaSymphony.com. sfsymphony.org. StagePass.com, Orchestra Scores and Sheet Music. StocktonZMphony.org. VirginiaZMphony.org. WheelingZMphony.org, Wheeling Symphony, Wheeling, WV. Music conductor websites. musicians-musicians-list/conductors/classical.html. conductorsguild.org. andrewlitton.com, Music Director, Conductor. bobinglesmusic.com, Film Composer and Film Music Conductor. choirmusic.org/pages/conductors.htm. conductor.ws. davidmathias.com. dinmusic.com. dws.org/Sousa, John Philip Sousa, American conductor, composer. elizabethwaldomusic.com. en.wikipedia.org/wiki/conducting. en.wikipedia.org/wiki/conductor_left parenthesis music right parenthesis. gilbertosurembe.it. HadariMaestro.com, Hadari Omri, Maestro Conductor. hans-zimmer.com. operamusic.com/music_conductor.cfm. Chapter 2. Classical music websites. Classical music websites 1. abc.net.au/classic, ABC Classical Network, Australia. Archive.org. Archive.org, Internet Archive is a 501(c)(3) non-profit. Arte.tv, Arte TV. bbc.co.uk/radio 3, BBC 3, streaming audio classical music and classical music programs. berliner-philharmoniker.de, Berlin Philharmonie/Berliner Philharmoniker, the Berlin Philharmonie Digital Concert Hall. Cacophonous.com, Cacophonous, an archive of rare contemporary, jazz, and classical music performances on MP3. cbc.ca/index.html, CBC Radio, Canada, Radio 2. Chandos.net, Chandos Records. charm.arhl.ac.uk, the AHRC Research Centre for the History and Analysis of Recorded Music, Charm. Site.delamusiquelive.tv, Site de la Musique Live.tv, concerts recorded at Site de la Musique and Salle Pleyel. Classical.com. Classical.net/music, classical.net, reviews, articles, repertoire list, works, composer biographies, scores. ClassicalConnect.com, Classical Connect, a large collection of free streaming classical music featuring complete performances. ClassicalMusicAmerica.com, America. ClassicalMusicMobile.com, Classical Music Mobile, download classical music for only $1 per work, app. ClassicalTV.com, Classical TV. Classical TV brings a global audience a destination for performing arts videos online, with the most impressive content and the most prestigious content partners. ClassicalWebcast.com, Classical live online radio webcast free streaming classical music. ClassicalWebcast.com/Europe.htm, European classical web stations, a directory. ClassicCat.net, ClassicCat, the classical MP3 directory. classicfm.co.uk/classic-fm-tv, Classic FM TV online. ClassicFM.com, Classic FM, Britain. classicol.com/classical.cfm ?music =radio, radio stations playing classical music, a world directory. composerscollab.org, composerscollab.org. cpr.org, Colorado Public Radio Live Classical Music Stream. Cylinders.library.ucsb.edu, the Cylinder and Preservation and Digitization Project, with funding from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. The UCSB libraries have created a digital collection of nearly 8,000 cylinder recordings held by the Department of Special Collections. DeutscheGrammophon.com, Deutsche Grammophon music downloads. DigitalC1Serthal.com, the Berliner Philharmonikers Digital Concert Hall, watch and listen live to classical music's finest conductors and soloists, live as it happens or on demand as it suits you. earlymusicradio.co.uk. Euroarts.com, Euroarts, Berlin. Expeditionaudio.com, Expedition Audio, reviews and full track samples of contemporary, modern, and so much more classical music. FineArtTV.tv, Fine Art TV, movies, video art. kcl.ac.uk/arts/departments/music/research/proj/ksa/index.aspx, The King's Sound Archive. The archive includes some 145,078 RPM records, mostly UK issues and covering classical and popular releases from the 1910s to C1960. KDFC.com, San Francisco Classical, KDFC. King.org, Seattle Classical, King FM 98.1. ClassicRadio.de, ClassicKradio.de, Germany. KC.com, Kasi.com. Last.fm, Last.fm, Last.fm lets you effortlessly keep a record of what you listen to from any player. Listen.com, MP3. listenlive.eu/classical.html, Europe. Medici.tv, Medici TV, music on film 24/7, live concerts, more than 200 films on VOD, video on demand, blogs, magazine, news. memory.loc.gov/mm/berlhtml, Emil Berliner and the Birth of the Recording Industry, is a selection of more than 400 items from the Emil Berliner papers and 108 Berliner sound recordings from the Library of Congress's Motion Picture, Broadcasting and Recorded Sound Division. Music.damians78s.co.uk, Damians 78s, and a few early LPS. Musicpreserved.org.uk. Naxos.com, Naxos Records Catalog online, with streaming audio files. Paraclassics.com, Paraclassics. Paraclassics is one of the global leaders for coverage of international classical music events, and they are doing our best to keep it totally free for the users as their contribution to the world's cultural life. PlanetRadioCity.com, Planet Radio City. PlanetRadioCity.com is India's largest music portal, online radio, Hindi songs and music videos from Bollywood and Hollywood. PristineClassical.com, Pristine Classical. Pristine Classical, over 400 historic titles online. Public-domain-archive.com, Public Domain Archive. Quartier-des-archives.blogspot.com, Quartier des Archives. Radioclassique.fr, Radio Classique, France. Radiodetango.com, Tango. sky.fm/classical, Sky FM Classical. Sonyclassical.com, Sony Classical Music Player. Soundcloud.com, SoundCloud, create, record and share your sounds for free. Spotify.com, Spotify. Spotify is an online music library, available for your PC, Mac, home audio system and mobile phone. TheClassicalStation.org, WCPE, great classical music 24 hours a day. WCPE, the classical station, plays great classical music 24 hours a day. TuneIn.com, TuneIn.com, tune into the world's radio stations. UBU.com, Ubu Web MP3 Archive, over 300 avant-garde films, performances, and videos, with rare interviews and music. WQXR.org/Q2, New York Public Radio's Q2. New York Public Radio's Q2 is an internet music station devoted to contemporary and innovative classical music programming. XLNC1.org, XLNC1L. YouTube.com/user/symphonymusic, symphonymusic. Weta.org, WETA. Washington's source for arts television. Classical music websites too. allclassical.com, all classical discographies for all major composers. si.umich.edu/chico/instrument, Chico Instrument Encyclopedia, University of Michigan. Classicalarchives.com, classical music archives. Download classic works and learn about classical music. Classical.net, Classica.net. ipl.org/div/mushist, Music History 102 biographies of composers, discographies, Internet Public Library. imslp.org, Imslope Petrucci Music Library, sharing the world's public domain music. Imslope stands for International Music Score Library Project. mutopiaproject.org, Mutopia Project public domain sheet music. infotoday.com/searcher/jewel06/madison.shtml, music to soothe the savage searcher, classical music databases and web resources. americanclassicalmusic.org. americanorchestras.org, American Symphony Orchestra League. classical.net. gramophone.co.uk. en.wikipedia.org/wiki/Andalusian_classical_music en.wikipedia.org/wiki/classical_music en.wikipedia.org/wiki/classical_music_and_folk_music en.wikipedia.org/wiki/classical_music_era bmi.com/libraries/brochures/high-story-book/index.asp classictic.com en.wikipedia.org/wiki/edison_classical_music_awards theclassicalstation.org en.wikipedia.org/wiki/European_classical_music leonardbernstein.com royalalberthall.com Royal Albert Hall events sfsymphony.org welcome to the San Francisco Symphony classicalhighschool.com abc.net.au/classic accessatlanta.com/arts/content/arts/index.html allclassical.com allmusic.com mclassical.com andante.com oralmoon.com orsymphony.org Oregon andante.com/reference/index.cfm angelfire.com/biz/acoustic-digest/almanac.html angelfire.com/music4/mezzo arc4music.com arc4music.com/classical/main.jsp asianclassicalmp3.org atlima.org Atlanta Early Music Alliance azstarnet.com/public/packages/realbook/contents.htm baroquemusic.org bbc.co.uk/music/classical bbc.co.uk/radio3/classical/index.shtml beethoven.com bl.uk/collections/sound-archive/wam.html bohemianopera.com branrecords.com broadcast.com/music/classical/index.html bubel.ac.uk/link/c/classicalmusiklinks.htm bywell.com calendarlive.com/music/classical carolinaclassical.com cduniverse.com chambermusic.co.uk chambermusic.co.uk/concerts chamber-music.org cincinnati.com/blogs/classical cl.cam.ac.uk/users/mn200/music/composers.html classical.com classical.music.ru classical.net/music, classical music classical.net/music/frames/index.html classical.net/music/links/musiclnk.html classicalarchives.com classical music archive classicalarchives.com/bach.html classicalcds.net classicalcollection.co.uk classicalinsights.com classicall.net classicalmidiconnection.com classicalmuse.com BMG Classics World classical-music.net classicalmusic.spb.ru concerts.newenglandconservatory.edu classicalmusicamerica.com classicalmusicmidipage.com classical-music-review.org classicalmusicworld.com classicalnotes.net classicalplus.gmn.com classicalusa.com classicalweb.com classicalwebcast.com classicalworks.com classiccat.net classicfm.com Classicol.com, designed specifically for classical musicians and classical music enthusiasts. Classicsforkids.com. Classicweb.com. cliffsclassics.com. cmf.scripscollege.edu, Classical Music Festival. cmle.com. crotchet.co.uk. cso.org, Chicago Symphony Orchestra. decaclassics.com. decaclassics.com/music/composers/index.html. The Phone Line, one of America's first classical music radio stations online. Download.com. eClassical.com. einet.net/galaxy/leisure-hyphen-music/douglas-bell/index.html, classical music on the net. en.wikipedia.org/wiki/classical_music_blog. Classical music websites 3. en.wikipedia.org/wiki/string_sextet. escapecommittee.com. essentialsofmusic.com. easyfolk.com. faqs.org/faqs/music/classical-faq. gmn.com/classical. goldbergweb.com. gprep.org/classical. gprep.org/classical/composers.html. gramophone.co.uk, classical music magazine. harmoniamundi.com. hexagony.net/music, the International Classical Music Academies. hypermusic.ca. impulse-music.co.uk. itcsra.org. kbps-fm, Northwest Oregon. king.org. kith.org/Jim Mosk, unknown composers. croesneist.com, old time and Celtic tunes. kunstderfuge.com. lib.duke.edu/dw3/index.php, classical music index. lib.duke.edu/music/resources/classical_index.html. mdt.co.uk. medieval.org/music/world/china.html. medieval.org/music/world/india.html. mfiles.co.uk/classical-music.htm. midiworld.com/classic.htm. moo.du.org. musedoc.com/classical. music.minnesota.publicradio.org. music.msn.com. musicabona.com. musicalnirvana.com. musicalonline.com. musicinfo.com. music-scores.com. musicweb.uk.net/classrev. musicweb-internetional.com. musicweb-internetional.com/classrevmusic.optimism.cc. mutopiaproject.org, several hundred classical music scores. mvdaily.com. naxos.com. naxos.com/education/music_categories.asp. ncsa.uiuc.edu/sdg/people/marsha-barker-beethoven.html. nhptv.org/kn. nil.es/rpajars/index_e.htm. npr.org/templates/topics/topic.php ?topic ID =104167, basic classical music library. ny.com/music/classical. opus1classical.com. orchestra.si.umich.edu. pbs.org/wnet/genre/classical_music.html. philharmonia.org/cl.ca.m.200/music/composers.html, classical composer biographies. playballarts.com playballarts.com/events/listing/1.html playclassical.co.uk prestoclassical.co.uk Prokofiev.org, pianist Sergei Prokofiev publicradio.org rhinegold.co.uk/magazine/cm/index.cfm roughguides.com/music rz-berlin.mpg.de/cmp/beethoven.html rz-berlin.mpg.de/cmp/classmuse.html seattlebaroque.org seattlepie.nwsource.com/classical sequenza21.com, The Contemporary Classical Music Weekly sfcv.org, San Francisco Classical Voice is the go-to place to learn about classical music in the Bay Area. sheetmusicarchive.net sonybmgmasterworks.com sdmoroki.com/reviews/music/classic.htm studio52.gr tucsonzmphony.org/blog um.dk/publicationer/um/english/facts Denmark/classical music very-clever.com/classical virtualsachetmusic.com w3.rz-berlin.mpg.de/cmp/wagner.html, Richard Wagner Archive wclv.com wdetfm.org wgms.com weeksu.org/classical/playlists.php wso.mb.ca/musicians.php, Winnipeg Symphony Orchestra xlnc1.org yasuhiko-d-dickerson.igc.org/classical-music.html